All right, folks, let's go ahead and get started. Again, good afternoon and welcome to Infosim's Global Webinar Day. Today's topic is Veni, Vidi, Vici, seeing as an integral part of conquering your network. My name is Paul Krochenski. I'm the Director of Strategic Sales here in North America. And I am joining you here from our Austin office, so it's a little bit early this morning for us, but that's okay. Happy to be here. Also joining me is my colleague Jason Fair, and Jason, you're one of our senior sales engineers, and you've been with the company for about 3 years, so welcome.
Good morning, everyone.
I will be your moderator for today's presentation, and Jason will be the presenter. Before we get started, we'll cover a couple housekeeping items. Today's presentation is in listen-only mode. If you do have questions, we highly encourage you to go ahead, log those questions in the chat window, and we'll go ahead and address those towards the end of the call. And just so you know, we will be recording today's call, and an archive version will be ready in about 24 hours or so you can view that at your convenience. And with that, Jason, and with further ado, I hand it over to you.
All right, good morning. So as Paul's already stated, this was the webinar to cover seeing as an integral part of conquering your network. So what we mean by that is that you can only address things that you can see. So proper trending and proper threshold management, and trending are keys to identifying issues before they arise. So once you have the proper thresholds set, then you can get rid of noisy alarms. I think we've all seen instances where threshold is too low. Maybe something gets 30% full and there's an alarm raised, and that's far too soon. So people stop paying attention to alarms because they just appear so often. But when you have the proper thresholds, then you know anything that has been raised is actually of importance. So we have a couple of different ways of visualizing and getting an idea of the health of the network. We have dashboards. These come in handy for having a live view of things such as open alarms, states and statuses of individual measurements. We also have ad hoc reports, which are things that we use in our analyzer or group analyzer to quickly just get a view of a portion of your network, the results of a job, some syslogs, what have you. And we have also dynamic dashboards, which are just like reports, but they are more of a template that can be applied to any of your measurements and devices. So here we go. So as I've already stated, they provide a high-level view of the environment, so you can get just a 10,000-foot view of the health of your network. You can gather a predefined set of KPIs in a what we call a standard report or a scheduled report. You know which KPIs you always want to gather from which devices, so you can have those KPIs scheduled to run whenever you like. I like to use dynamic reports, more of like a troubleshooting tool. So I know there's some states and information I'd like to gather when there is an outage. So when someone calls and says, or I notice that there's an outage in a certain portion of the network, I already have a predefined report that will pull the stats that will assist me in troubleshooting, and that will lead to a speed reaction to correct outages, lowering your mean time to repair. Okay, my slide doesn't want to advance for some reason. There we go. Okay, so here is an example of one of the dashboards that we have. There in the dashboards we have what we call widgets, which are little pieces of code that can be used to show different bits of information. So we have open alarms, which you can see here in the top right corner. That is a graphical representation, in this case in a pie chart format, of the current alarms that are open. We have the open alarms table, which is shown in the bottom portion of this screen. And this is a filterable list of the actual alarms. So you can choose to show, you can have a section that only shows critical alarms or informational alarms or whatever you like, or from a certain portion of your network, maybe only your routers or your switches, however you'd like to filter that down. We have the URL renderer, which is used to show an individual table or image from any website. That is an example that I'm using. The second one from the left here, this is at the time when I took the screenshot, this was a live view of downtown Houston during the flooding that is happening right now. We have status indicators, which is here in this portion. This is a quick overview of the severity of alarms and statuses in your system. Then we have a state filter. That's a way to show an individual icon, such as a image of a front of a server or a traffic light or anything that shows the current state of a monitor in your environment. And then we have weather maps, which is here in the middle. This is a representation of all of the devices in our lab in this case. Okay, so as I mentioned, we have ad hoc reports, and there's a lot of possibilities of things that you can show here. As you can see here is pie charts, bar charts, graphs, etc. And you can completely customize the color of the different alarms and components in there. This is applicable to all measurements in StableNet. As I've already mentioned, you can apply complex filters or even simple filters if you want to just show every device, or you want to only show devices that have a certain string in their name. However you'd like to filter out, you can do that. We have a top-in analysis, and this comes in handy in getting an idea of the most utilized or most noisy alarms, anything that you like. This is customizable to show the top 10, top 20, all of them, whatever number of information you'd like. We have inventory statistics that can show you, say serial numbers of all of your chassis or your line cards, etc. I have alarm reports, SLA statistics, etc. We have scheduled reports, which, as you can see here, is reusable, and it's all available. So this is all of the components that we have in our reporting engine that I will show you later, and this will be scheduled to run at a predetermined time. So say you have a backup job or some important job that typically runs at midnight, you can run a report at 1 a.m. to show the successful completion of that job and any issues that arose. And then we have dynamic reports, which I stated before is a template. So you know certain things that you would like to gather, and then it's just a matter of you choosing which devices on the fly. You can right click in the GUI and choose to show from a single device or any number of devices. Here's an example of a table that shows vulnerability check. So we ran all of these different known vulnerabilities against our lab devices, and you can see here, how many were okay, didn't have a configuration, how many failed. So in some of these cases, you can see down here, some of the devices passed while some failed. And we list the CVE ID here, so you can easily go and research and find that information. And here's a brief description of the check that was completed. I'd like to go through a couple examples of some of the things that are possible. So this one on the left is a stacked interface utilization. So this is two different interfaces in the same graph. Then we have a value indicator here. These are just icons that will change color based on the status of the measurement in question. And we've got quite a few, so it allows for some nice looking reports and indicators to give you a nice overview. Here's an individual interface utilization, and there on the right we have a list of configuration changes that may have happened in the past 24 hours. We have a device latency here showing the round trip ping times. You can get an idea of which devices are possibly on a congested link or too far away or whatever, to give you an idea of the general health of those devices. We have another view of the interface utilization where we show in a bar chart the inbound and outbound bandwidth utilization on interfaces. We have some available disk space graph here, and we have the general monitor availability of showing you, how much time. You can see here that these particular alarms went red there for a little bit, but they were green for most of the time. Now I'd like to get into a short little live demo so you can see some of these things in action. So now, first of all, you'll notice here in this particular dashboard that I showed earlier, it was nighttime, and now it is actually daytime. So here's the same view from that same traffic camera showing the state of the floods in Houston. Here's the open alarms and the status bar chart again. Here's I'd like to show you the default dashboard that comes by right out of the box with the system. So here we're showing the amount of alarms raised in your system with their severity, general health of the devices. Okay, so as far as the ad hoc, there's a couple of different ways that you can show information at a quick glance. So if we're doing an individual measurement, you can use the analyzer, and if you'd like to see for a group of devices, you can use the group analyzer. So let's take this interface, for example. I can hit the analyzer. I can quickly see for this device the ping status of this device. If I go down to one of the interfaces, I can hit the analyzer and I will see the bandwidth utilization, kind of like what I showed earlier. And you can control the time period here. So this is one full day in minutes. I can do several days doing hours, and you can see the peak utilization is this shaded portion, and the average value is the darker version. For the group analyzer, you can choose, and it defaults to the last one that you selected. In this case, this is the syslog table of the devices in that folder, and the amount of syslog messages that have come from those individual devices. This is handy when you need to get a quick view of what devices in your network could possibly be performing poorly, so you can get an idea of who's generating the most syslogs. There's quite an array of things to choose from here. We have call reports, audit reports to show who has made changes to your system. Cisco call reports, end of life, end of sale, end of support reports for all of your devices. Interface measurements, inventory measurements. This comes in handy when you're doing you want to collect all of the serial numbers or model numbers or chassis serial numbers, module serial numbers, line card serial numbers, etc. From your system. Have maintenance to show any maintenance that has been scheduled in your environment. Monitor SLA is a general overview of the status of your alarms. We have a policy check report and a vulnerability report. So the policy check is to go and check the health and conformity of your configurations. You can run snippets against those to get a general idea of whether your configurations meet your standards. And then down here on the bottom, we will have all of the scripts that are in use on your system, so you can quickly see the health and value of all of those scripts. So now I'll give you an example of a dynamic report. So if I choose an individual device here, now I right click, the device, show dynamic dashboard. The one I created, I called network dynamic. This will generate, since I only clicked one device here, I see the interface utilization. So I like to use reports such as this as for troubleshooting tools. So if someone calls and says, hey, the Bogota switch is down, so I can quickly click on that switch and show some information. So here's the interface utilization of each interface on that device. If there have been any alarms or outages in the past 24 hours, they will be displayed here. Any maintenance that was scheduled in the past 24 hours, and then the state of the backup of those devices. So in this case, I can see that this device, the configuration has not changed in the past 2 days, and the startup config has not changed in the past 72 days. So that would tell me possibly that this startup configuration could possibly differ from the running config on this device. This is some information that's handy in case this device were to lose power somehow. Then it's possible that I would lose some portions of the config because they haven't been saved. So now let's do that same report real quick against a whole folder of devices. It takes a second to generate. Okay, so now we have more interfaces because there's all devices in that entire folder listed here, and all of their interface utilization. And again, the same stats down here, any alarms or maintenance that's been scheduled. And now I can see the status of the backups for each individual device. In this case, I've filtered it down to only show me the backup and the startup difference, but you can show anything, the output of any of your CLI commands that have been run against those devices. Now the dashboards can also be popped out. So if I click this button here, and we'll open up a full screen version, and I can drag this to any monitor, say in the NOC, so people can get a overview of the health and whatever information. So you can pop this onto another monitor, and this will continue to update at the update interval that you have defined. What else? Are there some questions yet, Paul?
Well, in fact, we have 2 questions. I'm not sure if they're enough to stump you, but let's start with the first question if you're ready.
Sure.
Can you overlay data sets from different types of devices?
Sure. So that would be, I believe what you're referring to is what we call a multi-chart. So you can do that in a couple of different ways. Let me show you here in a report. I'll create a sample report here. And I can choose how often I would like for this report to run. In this case, I'm just going to do it as one time. And choose the format of the report. with the Excel report and PDF reports. And we allow for templates, so you can have your own interface, your own logos and such on all of your reports, and you can show those for a nice view. It looks nice when everybody has their own thing. Let me create here just one line in the chart. I will choose a multi-chart. Now I just choose whichever measurement I would like to show. So let's just say 2 interfaces. So I will choose this interface. This can be the interface bandwidth chart. You can tell which device I've chosen here or here, the time interval. Now I want to add a second device interface here. So let's choose a different device. Come down here, we'll try this one. Okay, now I can choose how I'd like to display those graphs. Time synced will align the times and stack those 2 charts right on top of each other. So let's go ahead and take a preview and see what we see. So now we can see both interfaces from 2 different devices in the same graph. So we can tell that this yellow color here is this Berlin, excuse me, this Berlin lab in the outbound direction has had much more traffic, and the Mexico device appears to not be utilized hardly at all. Okay. Is there another question?
Yeah, one more question, Jason. Is there a limit to the number of components in a dashboard?
Sure. So let's investigate that. So if I would like to create a new dashboard, you can click here. This is the dashboard editor. So now I can just say new. We'll make a sample dashboard. And by default, we default to a 2 columns and 2 rows layout. I can adjust this all the way up to a 12 by 12, so you could possibly show up to 144 different measurements, charts, etc. in one graph, in one dashboard, sorry. And this is easily customizable, so if you drag across here left to right or up and down, then you can merge these. You can quickly generate and arrange these however you like to make a very easily customizable and quick dashboard here. So, and once you click any of these, then you can just choose whichever of the widgets that you like. If I choose the open alarms table, for example, then I can choose which devices I'd like to pull those open alarms from. I can give it a name and etc. The 12 by 12 is the answer. Sorry, got a little long-winded there.
Oh, no worries. Perfect. I think that's it actually for the questions, Jason. So what we'll do here is we'll go ahead and we'll attempt to close up. Again, folks, we are going to post a recording of this webinar. It'll be archived on the website. Just go to the resource drop-down and select that. It'll be archived in about 24 hours or so. If you do have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us at any time, Jason or myself, or any of the Infosim staff. And feel free to take a look at the other webinars that are logged on our site as well. So what we'll do is we'll pause on this page. If anybody has a last-minute question, wants to put up their hand, we'll give about another 20 or 30 seconds or so, allow you to do so. And if not, we'll go ahead and formally close up the presentation. Jason, anything you wanted to add at the last moment here?
No, I'd just like to thank everyone for showing up and attending this webinar.
Excellent. Great presentation. Again, folks, I hope you enjoyed the webinar. Again, if you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to the Infosim staff. And with that, we're going to go ahead and close up the presentation. Thank you again.
Have a nice day.